All right, guys, welcome back. It's me and Eileen again with the core.
Hello, Joy.
Hello, Eileen. How are you?
Good.
With our series. Thank you guys for tuning in. Before we came on live, Eileen and I were discussing, the last couple of days and some of the interactions that I've had and with the work that we've been doing. And I decided that this would kind of be a great segue into today's segment, what we were talking about. And it was talking, the base premise of what we were talking about is stillness, and being, having that moment within yourself. Something I posted on my Facebook this week was the word stillness, because that came to me and it resonated with me very, very well, especially with, words, things are flying, social media, politics, sports, everybody's at each other's necks. And I decided to go opposite of that and go into stillness. Well, because of that stillness, a lot of other things have bubbled up to the surface to represent what stillness means when that contrast comes about with others. So Eileen and I were talking about that this morning into our lead, and I think it would be a great way to segment into our day. So Eileen, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we had said we would use this segment also to talk about the first pie, which is perfect for what you just described, because your first pie was positive influence and stillness. And what we're going to talk about today, we can be a positive, and we are a positive influence for others because it elicits change, and it inspires others to be more of what you are becoming. So let's start by going back to Pi 1, and we'll work our way up to today and the transition that you've been through from when you weren't able to be still and you felt that positive influence was one of the of all the 8 pies, it was the one that you needed. It was the strongest for you to work on and that you wanted to strengthen. So talk a little bit about your feelings of your positive influence at the beginning of the program and how it's progressed over the time that we've been coaching, and then we'll continue our conversation based on today.
Okay. Well, if going back a little bit in retrospect, sometimes it's hard to kind of go back in retrospect because you change over time and everything. You're not that same person then that you are now. So tapping into that takes a little bit. I would say, I think the reason why I picked positive influence on people as my first one is because I love teaching. You know what I'm saying? And I want teaching to be a positive experience. I've had amazing, experience as a student through, some amazing teachers myself. And I knew what it brought out of me, during the times when certain choreographers or certain directors saw something in me that I didn't even see and pulled it out of me. And I was like, wow, that was amazing, and I wanted that same feeling to have with my students. But one thing I at that time, I wasn't sure about my teaching. I was questioning my teaching. You know what I mean? And so I was like, how can I question my teaching and expect to have a positive result for my students? So there were some changes, that I wanted to make inside of myself to kind of reestablish that. So through this first pie, the blueprint steps took me through what I was projecting out, what I thought was negative aspects of my teaching and experiences. And like we were talking earlier, it's all perception and what your brain hears and what you hear from the outside and everything. And because I was dealing with so much on the outside world of my life that I was, kind of like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to focus on this and trying to focus on that and trying to focus on this. I was using external aspects for validation instead of going inside and going, everything you need within, T. Like you've been teaching this process for a long time. And I had to go back and go back to my basics, so that when I put out the work to the kids, there's a connection there. So it's something I had to remind myself through this is, if you want them to understand the basics, go back to the basics of yourself and become a student and learn those basics again. And that's what I had to do. And I think that's what made it easier for me to transition back into the teaching, because I was working on my basics as I was teaching the basics to them. So it was kind of a give. I was trading off what I was learning and then giving it back to the students, and then going back, learning, so I can go back and give to the students, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And I think another positive aspect of this new awareness that you have of your proactive listening and the being a positive influence in that stillness is the interaction with in the personal life, so with friends and family and people that you are around every day, has also improved, and that has given you more inspiration and ability to be there for your students as your career and profession. And so we were talking earlier about how our mind takes in information in a way that will twist and turn it without us being aware of that happening.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an example between the two of us where we were talking before we started recording, and I said on a scale of 0 to 100%, how much information out in the world today is 100% true.
And to be honest, you guys, I heard something completely different. And then once I said it, then it kind of recognized, and Eileen said, "Did you hear what I just said?" And I was like, "Yeah," and I repeated it, and it came out completely different. And I was like, "Wow." So it made me realize, I think I look at when we're talking about programming the mind, we are programmed through a screen. I mean, like you and I are on a screen right now, no matter if it's a computer screen, if it's a mobile phone or a TV screen, we're being programmed by something, and it's how we decipher the programming through the information that's given through the screen into our minds, programmed, and then deciphered back out, how that is perceived, and that was a great example this morning. And it really kind of opened my eyes of like, okay, to be a lot more aware of the words and the intention of the words that are coming out of people's mouths, because we only hear certain things in certain manners. And I love the example, well, not the example, but the breakdown you were giving between how males and females compartmentalize, feelings and emotions completely different, and how we hear things completely different. And it's so true, like, obviously I'm a male, and so yes, we compartmentalize things, and if this is not here and this is not here, then this over here is not going to make sense to us. You know what I mean? It's like a domino effect. And you're right, where females are able to I kind of like a weaving. It's like this, and weaving in and out. It could go this way, it could reap this way, and for us guys, we're just like, that's chaos to us, complete chaos.
Exactly. It is. Yes, and what I've learned between the males and the females is there's a lot of miscommunication. And that's because of the way we perceive, we take in information and process and spit it back. So a lot of times a female will be talking to a male, and he, just like this morning with you and I, the male will not hear what she's actually saying. And if she retorts back to him, this is what I said, and in his mind, it's not what he heard. And so he will tell her, well, that's not what I heard. And so then there becomes tension, and it becomes this like battle of the wills. And what I want to impart to people is to really be in that stillness, what you're learning to practice, and to tune into that inner self, that part of the being that processes information. And if someone tells you, this is what I heard, then be aware that either your perception has twisted it in a way that it wasn't really spoken in the way that the person said it, or the person said something in a way that was different than you wanted to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a male will take this compartment and this one, and while they're putting it into this one, they're already trying to figure out where these two fit. And what happens is sometimes in the middle, they miss certain information because they're so busy trying to piece things together.
Mm-hmm.
And when they, when the pieces aren't exactly in a way that they make sense, then the mind's trying to figure it all out while more information is coming through, which is another point as to why males have a difficult time when females speak a lot. Males get full in their capacity to take in information. We have to, as females, we have to give them time to process.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to talk in short and sweet, or say a little bit and be in that stillness and silence. Watch their behavior, watch their posture. And what I find also, and think about this, Troy, sometimes, and then probably more often than not, if there's a pause in your speaking, it's not that you're done talking, it's that you're processing that compartmentalization. So I've learned, and I share with others, I'm teaching today, that when you're talking with a male and your own self, pay attention to when information's coming in and you take a pause and you're in that silence. Are you processing that information before you want to say something else, before you take it to that next level of that conversation, because you want it to make sense? You don't, females, we will talk, and it doesn't matter if it makes sense or not, because it makes sense to us in our head. But think about it, females talk in circles sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
sorry, ladies who are watching, I'm just speaking the truth, ladies who's ever watching. You guys do talk in circles, guys.
I know. So we talk in circles, but what I've learned about myself is I get my answers by talking out loud. Males get their answers by processing internally. And so it's learning by observing, and this will be great for you with your personal experiences in your students, to now start taking notice of what's the difference between the males and the females and how they interact with you and how they process information, but also what happens differently between the males and females in that silence that you give them. Whether you're listening to them or you're processing your own information and you're taking time to speak the next step or the next voice that you want to present.
So what's coming to me here is there's a few things that we've covered in just a little bit of time. To have a positive impact on somebody, there's certain steps, not certain steps, but some tips. I'd rather say tips than steps to help, taking that pause during the conversation. Okay. Knowing, especially if you're talking on, male female scenario and situation, that the two are going to process information differently. So I get, from a male perspective, taking the pause, trying to listen to where this is going. Okay. But also on the other side of the aspect, from the female aspect, when the male does pause, he's pausing because he's processing. He's not checking out. He's trying to process what is being said. Also with that, I think that will lead to a greater positive impact on the person, because if you can respect that dynamic, then you'll have a better communication flow with each other. So then you'll be able to respond back to one another to have more of a positive impact on each other. But, if we don't understand and take those clues of how we hear things within our processes, then, that little information can really just switch that fast and go from a positive experience to a negative experience. So, a pause is not always a bad thing. If someone's just being quiet, doesn't mean that they're not listening. It means they're processing, and they're taking in the information. So I think it's also not only the person who's speaking, but the person who's receiving too as well, to be able to be close enough within oneself to understand when this person's in that manner. Don't take it personal. Just allow them to process. And maybe they need to just process for a second, and then they can share with you. But then when they share, also be willing to be open and pause and hold the space and not interrupt them. I think that's a big thing, because then once that person's ready to speak, the other person's ready to jump on it. Allow them to speak.
Exactly. And I'm going to add something else that we talked about before the recording to what you just said, is as the receiver of that stillness. And so when you're still and you're in that quiet space, it will make people around you, or can make people around you, uncomfortable. And it's to realize that we don't have to feel uncomfortable when someone is in silence. Doesn't mean they're mad at you, upset with you, angry. You don't have to worry about if you did something or said something that caused them to be quiet. It's actually a process of being able to listen, and then truly listen, and to truly be able to hear 100% of what's being said, and not feeling, not taking in a half truth or a false truth, but to hear what the person says. And with that, the other person, when you respond in a positive way that aligns with what they actually say, the relationship and the communication will be in a feel-good space. That ability to be with you again, because they now feel good, they feel heard, they feel understood, you feel respected, and they're going to respect and value that silence that you now are practicing in your daily interaction. And in that silence, there's actually information, and there's movement. People don't understand that. And I think it's something that more and more is being expressed in self-help and self-development professions. And so today we're just sharing in real life how it works, and how this program and the processes you're going through, how it's helping you.
I would like to share kind of a domino effect of those processes. And we talked about this, off air prior before, with the stillness, okay? And just that stillness and that quietness and how it has an impact. And something we had talked about, through the process with me, just, using that pause, okay? Well, how I approach that and give the domino effect when I teach my students is I use the example, and like I said, we talked about this earlier with Michael Jackson. I still think he's the greatest entertainer ever, because people can get on anybody can get on stage and sing, dance, move around, and people are going to clap and cheer, because they're excited to see that person, that individual. It's a different aspect when someone can get on stage and not move one muscle and just stand there for a minute. Now, if anybody has watched any Michael Jackson, I've been very lucky that I went to a couple of his concerts when I was younger. I went to the Dangerous Tour and the Bat Tour, so I got to see it in person. When he gets on stage and he just stands there, and the crowd would just go nuts. You just feel the energy build and build and build and build and build and build. Next, people are screaming off the top of their lungs, and this man hasn't moved for 2 minutes. And he's just standing there. And I tell kids, you know how powerful that is? When you can just walk in a room and stand, not say a word, not move, and people start to vibrate. And like, he would walk through a room and people would pass out, and they can't understand that. But it was just, I feel like he was so in tune with himself and who he was that it vibrated out, and people felt it, and it was uncontrollable. So I with dance, people think you gotta be good. You have to have all these 1,000 moves. You gotta do all these things. I was like, no, stop and just be there. And so some of the techniques I'll use with my students, I've done in the past, is I'll ask them to hold a pose or a shape. And then I'll bring the other students around. I'm like, tell me what you think this shape is. And then I ask another student. And then I ask another student, okay, what feeling do you get from this shape? And then I'll bring another student, and I'm like, okay, I want you to make the same shape that this person is doing, but I want you to put a funny face on it. And then I'll have the students evaluate what they get. So you start painting a picture for them. So stillness is very powerful, and it's how you use it. I think it's a technique that is not used as much as in dance, because we're always taught to move and move and move. But to be still and paint a picture is just as powerful as someone doing 1,000 moves. If you know how to cultivate the energy within yourself to be present in that moment.
Awesome. I couldn't have said it any better. Other than, I just want to add, and you used it in your last few words, it's about presence. And you and I talked about that a lot through the process of this program for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's your presence. It's when you walk in a room. Sometimes all you have to do is walk in, and people just gravitate and they want to be around you. You don't have to speak. You don't have to act. And that's developing the boundaries and the respect. But it's within you often itself. You know, we don't have to be a certain way. It's just be yourself in that presence, in that stillness, in that quiet, in that positive influence, positive impact. And it'll just explode out, ripple out, and people will want more of that, because ultimately the human species wants to feel good. They want to feel loved. And in our presence, we can express that outwardly. And that's what Michael Jackson did. He didn't have to do anything but stand there. He expressed it out through the energy of being present with nothing else. And think about it, there's no judgment in it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing there but energy and love and essence. You can't judge. There's no room for judgment in that. So then what happens is you get a connection with the other person at a different level, not in the ego or mental level, at the heart center of the oneness level. And through that, it helps another person feel good about themselves, and you feel good because you don't have to do anything other than be yourself. How cool is that?
Mm-hmm. I mean,
yeah?
That was one of the reasons why I started my channel, Justbeingmetv. Is just I got to one of my philosophy: actions speak louder than words. And I've talked about this with you, and we talked about this in the series. Is like me growing in the process of movement was a way of expressing myself, and now at this stage in my life, being empowered that my words are just as powerful as my movement. So getting to this place right now of balancing those two, and understanding those things are they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. I was younger, I used the power of my movement to get things across because my words wanted to say something, but I couldn't line them up perfectly. I could not perfectly, that's a wrong word to say, in a way that I would express and that people would understand. So I would revert back into, okay, I'm gonna use movement. And then once I started using movement and getting on stage, people would start relating to it. They were like, oh, that's what you were trying to say. Okay, so then you get that aspect of it. Then it became to, once I started putting that myself out there and performing and this and that and getting those responses, then it became, I gave so much. Then I lost who I was because I was always giving energy out and out to get that. It was kind of like a drug. Getting on stage to me was a drug. I'm gonna be honest, it was a drug. It was my drug, and I wanted to get that fix every time. But when I didn't have the energy to put it out anymore, I was very drained. So it became now, I started pulling away from dance and other things. And then, people are like, well, why don't you come around, this and that? And I'm like, come around. I don't want to dance. They're like, no, just come. And I didn't understand why people wanted me to come. Like, I'm not performing. I'm not dancing. What do you want me there for? Like, my brain at the time was, if I'm not going in and putting in work, if I'm not teaching, performing, making this money, why do I need to be there? That was my frame of mind then. But now I'm starting to understand it's not even about that. Just sometimes, people just want you around just to be in the environment and just enjoy it, just your presence. And now in retrospect, I look at that just because, there's been a lot of people I've interacted with in the past, and, they're off doing other things and stuff, and it's cool. They're doing great, amazing things. Sometimes I just want to hang around because I like them for the people that they are. It's not because they're doing amazing things. It's just the person that they are. They're very cool to talk to, they're just, when they're around them, I'm relaxed, I'm chill. What I'm saying? We can have great conversation or we can relate to something. So it's not about what they do or what they have, is who they are. And that is something I'm learning about, myself. You know what I'm saying? Because I was so projected of putting out this image of, you know, I'm this person, this is what I do, this is what I'm about, you know, and it was a very, in retrospect, it was a very egotistical image that I was placing out to the world. And I had to let him go to get back to the stillness, and the only way I got to is stillness. I had to be still, be quiet, go inward, to be able to go back and present himself now in this manner, where now I'm doing videos in my channel and just being me. And that, the whole point of this was to come back around. Just being me, this is who I am. It doesn't matter if I'm performing, if I'm on a screen, if I'm writing something, or if I'm just sitting having a conversation. This is the person that I am, and I'm gonna be that person no matter what environment I'm in. You know, so I think and what we're trying to get across here to our viewers is going inside in the stillness is just as strong as going into the gym and grabbing a bunch of weights and throwing them up and down. You know, I take that as a confirmation when I say something good and something happens, phone rings, then you're on a good point. So that's a good confirmation for me.
There's always something that gives that confirmation, right?
Yeah, I always take it as a confirmation when you're speaking something good, something outside, and the outside world will ring or bang or blow up or something or make some noise and be like, okay, I'm saying something right. You know what I mean?
Yes, well, and you just hit on a bunch of wonderful points and great points. And what came to mind is that as you come full circle, you're able to maximize your performance, whether that's being in the stillness, whether that's teaching, whether that's communicating with other people. We're always performing. We're always being that artist, whether we think in an artist mindset, because we're always painting a picture. Who we are, why we're here, where we're going, is a vision. So the blueprint that's within this program has allowed you to set up your connection with that vision and that knowledge and that knowing of that inner compass of who you are as that authentic self. And it's allowed you to have your voice, whether it's speaking or whether it's dance, and that voice is there even in the stillness. You don't have to say anything.
I just,
So,
you know, it resonates with what oh, sorry, go ahead.
and I think that's awesome to see both that you've gone through and how I'm anxious now to see the impact of what we've discussed today, what's happened over the last few days and the culmination of today, what the impact it's going to have, a positive impact and influence on your students and those around you. So I look forward to hearing what's happened over the weeks. Because something always happens with you, Joy.
If anybody,
shifts
yeah, if anybody who's like
screaming sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny. I tried to tell people who've ever been close to me, I said, stick around. Something's going to change. Something always, that's kind of been my MO in my life. You know, like something always goes boom or something changes. I'm like, all right, that's just the way it is. But you're right, because after, you know, we come on air and we talk about our sessions and the work that we're doing. I'm really lucky because, you know, 2-3 days down the line, I'm back in the studio working with my kids. And a lot of times that the stuff we're talking about starts to show right with me and my students, you know, so I'm looking forward to that here in a couple of days. You know, the power of stillness, like that is resonating in my head right now. Power of stillness, power of stillness. So I know what I'm going to be focusing on with my kids, you know, teaching in the studio coming this week is the power of stillness. I'm going to completely go opposite of what we've been doing because I just been throwing movement and technique, training, getting stronger, movement technique, and then I'm going to flip it and just go to stillness. And I know it's going to freak their brains out because it's completely opposite of what they're doing. And I'm going to love it. It's going to be fun.
I was going to say, that's a great challenge, you know, that'll snap them up to another level of awareness. And perhaps you can share with them the reasoning behind it, you know, some of the things about that knowledge to these kids. And I can tell you right now, they are so lucky and blessed to have you as their teacher at this age. because you're setting the foundation just as we've set the foundation for you with this program. You're passing that on to the kids, and it's gonna carry them through the rest of their life, and they will, I'm sure they will forever remember this training that you're giving them. And sometime down the future, they're gonna thank you. They don't already, and they probably will thank you now too, but if you think back and you've talked to me a few times about the different coaches you've had over your life, and there's a few coaches who have stuck with you as being your great mentors and a part of who you've become today. And I believe for these students, you're going to be one of those coaches that they'll talk about when the teachers, they'll talk about when they become an adult.
That would be really cool. You know, my one of the just real quick, I want to share this. One of the teachers, my 8th grade English teacher, probably gave me the best advice a teacher could give a student. I asked her one day, why did she teach? And Eileen, you still there? Our connection's kind of going in and out, but I think we're good.
I'm here.
Okay, cool. I asked her, why do you teach 8th grade English? And her response was amazing. She said, my job is to take 7th graders and prepare them for 9th grade English. Once that year is over, I get a next set of students to prepare them. And it was just such the simplest philosophy that just resonated with me. I was like, wow, that is so simple and so easy. I got this set of kids to come in. I got to prepare them to get them to this level and move them on, because I know I got another set of kids to come in.
No, that's amazing. She was right on target. And essentially that's what's happening here is I'm preparing you so you can prepare your kids to go to where they're going, and then you're going to get another set of kids. And it'll continue, and that set for you can get larger and larger.
And
so
that goes
eventually. What?
I say that goes along with hip hop. Each one teach one. You know, I tell the kids, I'm like, this is your job. Your job is to, once you learn whatever you learn out of here, I said, I don't care if it's your mom, your grandma, the kid down the street, your cousin, or your puppy. You got to teach them one little thing that you learned out of this class, because this is how the culture stays alive. Each one teach one. It's passed down. I said, this culture of hip hop was not brought up in the studio. It's a social interaction. And just like other cultures, it's passed down from generation to generation. So my job is to teach you guys these things that I've learned. Now it's up to you guys to pass it on to the next generation.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, I think we can close out today, and I want to find out from you what 2 or 3 takeaways that you feel you got out of today.
The how would I say this? The power of the pause. Power of the pause. Perfect example. That's one example. Reinstating the power of the pause. How important that is in communication. Not only just in communication and in life. Those things are very element. Number 2 would be, no matter if you're moving or staying still, energy is still being processed and flowing. So just because you see someone sitting quietly doesn't mean they're angry, mad, sad, or anything. Stillness is still very powerful. It's just as much as someone giving a long speech. It's how you interpret the 2 things is how things are going to be processed within yourself, you know, and it's up to you. So it's up to the person who's evaluating or perceiving how this person is, you know, expressing himself. How you respond to it is on you. Like, you can look at this person being still as they're having a moment to themselves, or you can look at them as they're being angry, or you can look at them as peaceful. It's how you interpret it for yourself. But those feelings, you can't be mad at that person for having that moment. How you're impacted by those feelings is on you. That's your responsibility.
Very good. Well, as always, Troy, what an awesome chat today.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And I look forward to seeing, hearing, and talking next week on what's happened between today and the next time we talk.
Yes, me too. I'm pretty sure there'll be some really cool experience I'll have with one of my students and stuff and everything. What I'd like to do maybe see when I bring this work into my students, maybe record some of the work and everything. It would be kind of cool if I could kind of integrate some of that work within the videos too, so we can use an example. So say if we talk about something and then like bring an example of me working with the kids and this is what happened, something to think about for the future reference.
Absolutely. Sounds awesome.
Alrighty.
Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we will do this again next week.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.